Oh, hey! How you doing? Hey, thanks for joining me in the Dependent Independent Podcast studios. I'm Nick G., the host of the Dependent Independent Podcast, and when most of you are either out having a good time on a Saturday night or you're getting ready for bed, I'm hanging out with my Facebook friends, which are live right now on my Facebook page, kind of hanging out in my studio, but I think it's time for a little cleaning. I've been somewhat neglectful of my studio. This studio has been here for probably about, I think I've been doing YouTube videos down here for a little bit shy of a year, and I have yet to clean up down here. I vacuum the floor as much as I can, but see these shelves back here? The interesting thing about the Dependent Independent Podcast and me starting this whole 200 episode podcast is I think there's a story behind everything, and I think those stories is what make who we are and what helps us, and through those experiences to help us move forward, which you've heard about it on my podcast. Now, this isn't going to go on a podcast. This is more of a visual journey, but rather than cleaning the studio by myself, what I wanted to do was actually include you, those watching on YouTube and on Patreon, and also those that are checking me out on Facebook Live, to kind of go through a little bit of memory lane. I have these things on the back of my studio on these shelves. And I like the word Easter egg because Easter egg always has some type of story behind it that when you know about it, it's special. Now, these are all Easter eggs to me, and I thought I'd like to take an opportunity as I clean some of these things off, or at least take some of these things off the shelf, that I can kind of let you know exactly why the items on the back of this shelf are important to me. So when you watch this show and you watch us on Facebook Live, or you watch this video on YouTube and Patreon, you can kind of get it, right? I mean, I think that's kind of cool. My whole thing here is really letting you into my life and sharing it with you, and I think that's the best way to connect with people, and that's what my show is all about. And I love the fact, which is kind of a bummer, that I have a whole group of people watching me and listening to me on Facebook Live, but I can't engage them, but my job here is to engage you and those as well. So here goes. So why don't we do this? We're going to start at the top and kind of work our way down, because as in doing anything, I painted houses as a kid. I started painting when I was 14. Pretty much that's what Mr. Farmer, my Spanish teacher, who found an opportunity to take me to his... I know, actually telling the story is kind of weird because from an outside perspective, it's kind of creepy because I was only 14 and he asked me to come to his house to paint his house. But it's like it was one of those things where he did it on purpose because he knew I guess he had an idea I wasn't getting the right guidance at home, and he decided to bring me, and it was I still paint to this day, paint houses, paint friends' bedrooms, and I'm doing actually work right behind the camera, doing a shelving system that Megan wants to put in our front closet upstairs. And he took that opportunity to really tell me some things and really kind of educate me on life, basically. So let's kind of get started. Now, I know some people on the Facebook Live feed actually wanted to know about the clock. The irony is this clock is actually something from my wife, Megan. She's actually the host one of the hosts of the UBU podcast with Megan Live. This I haven't plugged this in yet. It's an electric clock. I think it just looked badass, and to be honest with you, it's probably the one thing on this entire shelf that I haven't found something to replace it that actually has true personal meaning to me. So it's more of a space filler. And Annette, I'm sorry, I know you're listening to the show. On live. I don't have much of a story to tell about that. So, but the thing right here, these pigs, that's a really cool. And I'm gonna basically take things down, kind of hold its essence, and kind of give you an idea about what it's about. So, this right here, this is a statue. I was given this from, actually, you can write on the back of it, but I think with chalk, but I don't do anything with it. This was a gift from Todd and Steph Bannon, and let me tell you a little bit about Todd and Steph. I met Todd and Steph about a year ago. Actually, a year ago, almost to the day. To the day in a few days, or to the year in a day. Right back here, this poster here was something I ordered for my first live event, and it's ironically, this kind of everything's connected on the table once we start. This is a bottle of Cracked Concrete. Cracked Concrete is actually it's from the Tomfoolery Brewing Company, but it's actually it's the official beer of the the Dependent Independent podcast, and it's something I tried at Tomfoolery about probably a year and a half ago. But on that night, the first time I ever decided to one, celebrate what I was doing, because I've been doing it for 2 years, and that's why we had the hashtag 2 years to the day. And we did this live event where I decided to invite anyone I knew on Facebook and anyone who listened to my show locally to come and celebrate with me. I brought my friend, my best friend, Duarte Montero. I call him Dewey, who started the show with us. Our first few episodes, it was really just him and I talking in his studio where he works. And I met this woman named Steph, and Steph Bannon. I didn't know who she was, and I don't think she even knew what we were doing at Tomfoolery, but she came up to me and said to my work, came up to my wife and said, what's this all about? And my wife felt fairly uncomfortable and didn't know how to respond, so she forwarded it to me. And that was like to this day, the very first time I had to actually explain to someone out loud what this is all about. And I picked my words wisely. I'm sure she can tell you what I said. I don't remember what I said. But since then, Steph and Todd, as much as I wish I would see them, I could see them more often, we've built a close relationship. And if you've been listening to the show, you kind of understand that this journey hasn't been easy for me, because prior to this, it was very easy for me, and a choice I made in life, to basically push people away. I wasn't welcoming anyone back in my life. I had a lot of tragedy as a kid and loss, and I guess I created this way of protecting myself by pushing people away. So in essence, these were one of the first people I was able to let in. And Steph and Todd have welcomed me at their home. I did a podcast with them at their house that to this day is the most downloaded podcast I've ever done on the Dependent Independent podcast. I don't know if it's because the title is Beer, Bacon, and Marriage. I don't know why that may come in at every search that anyone does for a podcast, but one of the most popular podcasts I've had. But at my next live show, which was at Vinyl Brewing only a few months ago, I was presented this gift, because both Steph and Todd actually run and are proprietors of the home business, the Union Pork Company, which they make homemade bacon, which please check them out on Facebook. They're amazing bacon makers. It's the greatest. It's the only time you can eat a pound of bacon and not feel guilty, because you feel like you're actually eating a meal. But I decided once they gave this to me, I took what was ever up there and I decided to put that up there. So Todd, Steph, and I know this video is going to go up after tomorrow, but Todd, I'm excited to visit you tomorrow. I hope this is not a surprise, but maybe I might see you for your birthday sometime tomorrow and be able to chat with you, give you some of my homemade beer that I just made. But really, this is very, very important, and I know we might not see you guys all the time, but I was excited to welcome you in my house and meet your kids. And the last time I love to make it a holiday tradition, but we went over to your house on a couple days before New Year's Eve, and this pig thing is the coolest thing I got here going for me, and I do appreciate that. I'm anxious to see you guys again. I love you guys, and that's the story behind this pig thing here. And again, there's probably a story because this, the white, I don't get the pig. Maybe that's, that's me. Maybe that's me. I never felt he belonged, but I am sitting on the back of a bigger pig. All right. So kind of going down here, I have a lot of books. I keep a lot of books in here. And I don't know if I'm going to pull them off, all of them, but they kind of represent something. I don't know. I mean, you have shelves. You're kind of compelled to actually put shelves on or books on a shelf. But ever since I was a kid, my outlet's always been video games. And as I got older, I didn't realize they actually made books that were tailored towards about video games, but more of an adult kind of themes. Or kind of digging into what the whys of video games. So I read this book a while back by Tom Bissell called Extra Lives, which really talks about the science, or the kind of the logic behind why video games are really, really important. And I have a few books on here. I used to have Ready Player One, but that movie's coming out next month, so I decided to pull it off the shelf and actually read it, so I can enjoy the movie, or at least say, hey man, that's not in the book. Don't people do that, right? Don't people usually do that? They read the book and they're like, because I have by my latest bonus podcast that I posted with Margot D and Margot P from Book versus Movie. They read a book and then they watch a movie and tell you what's better. Basically, that's what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to do that. And Margot's, if you guys are watching or if you're tuning in on Facebook Live, you guys let me know what you think. I'd love to see that kind of podcast because I don't know about being an 80s kid, but I get a chill every time I watch those trailers on YouTube. And then I miss my calling as a kid. I've talked about it before in a Memorial Day episode. I'm from a family of military people, and as I've grown in my career, I've starting to learn about leadership and what it means to lead, the impacts you can make on people's lives by leading effectively. So these are books I've read just simply for inspiration. We got 13 Hours, which are those special ops guys that got out got out of Benghazi and that whole thing with Clinton and all that crap. But this is the story about them, which is pretty awesome. And then this great book. I'm a big fan. I'm always impressed about people that live their profession in precision, right? Like surgeons and military, like Navy SEALs, and how they go through what they've been trained how to do in such a precise, specific way that you can't get any better than how they execute whatever they execute. So I've read a couple books on Navy SEALs to kind of give me an idea. And again, I'm not a Navy SEAL at all. I mean, of course, from this build, not a Navy SEAL. But these books are important to me because they are kind of a not a rescue, kind of a safe place to go for me to enlighten that part of my brain that shows that even me and you at home and you on Facebook Live can find a way to be the best, the absolute best you can be in whatever you do and make the most significant impact being as precise as you can be in what you're good at. And that's why I read these books here. But some of these books I got, well, actually, I don't want to skip any. Let me take that back. I don't want to skip any because some of these things are really now this is kind of more of the sentimental stack. Rick and Morty. I have a friend named John McElraith, and this story is more important than just simply a pint glass with two characters on it. I've known John since I was probably actually I've known him since I was a kid. But John and I don't know what it is when I gotta apologize. I always do this. I don't know why I get the sniffles every time I do this. I don't know if I'm ready to cry because of these sentimental stories that I'm about to tell, but cheers. Let me just take a break. So I have a friend, and even though I don't see my best friend John every day, I consider him my best friend because I feel like I'm more connected to him than any any other guy in my current life. And it's not it's not, or it is. It's the one thing that's amazing, and as you get older, is it's really hard to find things that you like, right? Whether it be TV or like things you can really, really get into. And you talk to people and you ask them for recommendations, like, what are you watching on Netflix? What are you watching on Hulu? Or what's this movie coming out or what have you? And I have a friend named John McElraith. He and his wife, Kristen, were actually early on. They were one of my first co-hosts on the show. And everything he's ever recommended to me, I mean, to the T, has always been a home run or a grand slam. Everything he's ever recommended, any book, TV or movie, it's not like I'll watch it and go, yeah, it was all right. It always becomes something that becomes the absolute norm in my life. And I have here Extras, which is a series done by Ricky Gervais, which that's one of his last series, but he started with The Office. That was something that John referred to me. But John referred and if you guys have an opportunity, I don't know if it's not for everybody, but Rick and Morty is a cartoon on Adult Swim that is one of the smartest cartoons I've ever watched, but one of the most gratuitously violent shows I've ever watched. And now that I like it, my kids are showering me with things from Rick and Morty. I think I even have here, have you guys seen season 3? If you don't know who Pickle Rick is, this is Pickle Rick. Check out Pickle Rick, episode 3, season 3, episode 4, season 3 of Rick and Morty. The greatest, smartest show on the planet. Hopefully I can get more stuff from Rick and Morty, but this was simply a gift for my kids. I think this was my birthday, and we just got this earlier this week. But Pickle Rick is the shit, and I think you should guys check that out. And I'd love for you to check that out and tell me what you think. I'd love for the community to check it out and tell me what you think. All right, cool. And again, I'm cleaning, so I'm in no rush. I hope you're not in a rush either on Facebook. But these are my books. Oh, and this one right here. This is crazy because it's actually stained. I can't remember how this happened, but you've heard on my my story. You've heard it that when I was a young kid, my mother had gotten sick and passed away right after my twin sister and my 6th birthday, right around the holiday. It was January 4th. Actually, this year was 32 years. Is it 32? 40? 36 years that my mother passed. And my grandmother was ended up taking us in and raising my twin sister and I. And my grandmother became the matriarch in my life. She was my mother figure, but she became more than that because she was someone I could talk to anything about. I would love to know what she would think about doing this project. I would love to know what she thought. But this is a book. It's entitled "I Believe in You," to your heart, your dream, and the difference you make. And she wrote this note, and this is what she wrote to me. She passed in 2005, but she wrote this in 2001 at Easter. She said, "The whole idea of living is to believe that the best is yet to be. Love and live life fully, Grandma Lucia." And this book is a motivational or just snippets of things to get you thinking differently and moving forward. Ironically, I should probably maybe use these in the show, but I keep this even though this book is battered. This is my grandmother gave me this. The coolest lady in the world gave me this book, and that is why this book is here. It sits there. People watch the YouTube channel. They might not even notice, but the interesting thing is it says, "I believe in you," and I believe in me, and no, you know what? Not yet. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm still struggling with that. And you join me for me to do this stuff, and you watch me doing this podcast, or you watch me on YouTube and you listen to me on this podcast. You're experiencing this journey of me figuring this out. So that is why this book is important. I believe in you. But thanks, Graham. Peace. All right. At one point, I wanted to write a screenplay. And I talked about it on my show before, but one of the biggest inspirations was Kevin Smith. He started a podcast too, a very successful podcast. But I have Chasing Amy is probably one of the best screenplays ever, or best movies he's ever done. And that is actually why this book is here. Again, some military books, and then another video game book called Console Wars, which is actually the you might not even know some of the gamers, or if you're a casual gamer, the conflict between Sega and Nintendo during the 80s when the Genesis came out and all they wanted to do was destroy Super Nintendo, and that crazy unrealness of that story. And the cool thing is about the author, Blake Harris, who actually tweeted, I talked to him online, he really gets into, it's not favored to one side, and I think with any type of conflict, it's really cool to understand both sides of the story to really understand why the conflict exists, because I don't think there's ever a right way of doing something. There's only the way of doing something. And the way he goes back and forth and educates you on the stories behind both. And I think it's great that everyone's joining me. And let me check. Actually, we got some folks on Facebook Live. We got Dave. We got Ryan. We got Nina join me, which is pretty cool. Hey, Nina. I think I need to meet you. I know we've gone back and forth. I'm sorry, I'm talking to my phone, to those YouTubers. And I think I ought to get you on the show. That's all. Just think I need to get you on the show. And I could tell you this, and I'll say this right now. I don't know if he's still on there, but Ryan Hance, he's a guy I played lacrosse with, live with, one of the best leaders I've ever had the pleasure to be on a sports field with. Guy always had my back. I love complimenting him every time I see him. He's an unadulterated leader, and he's inspired me to do what I do as a leader in my profession. So I salute you, Ryan. And this is not Captain and Coke, but this is just beer. I love you too, Nina. All right, cool. So, all right, cool. I am dusting. I know this whole thing was about cleaning. This is an antique. This is a box of a Nintendo card called RC Pro-Am. And let me tell you the story about this. I know I've talked about my grandmother a little bit, but I'm going to talk to you, and my friend John McElraith, but I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my friend Tony. Anthony Zambrano, a gentleman I met the second day I moved in with my father in an apartment complex in New Jersey, in Monmouth County, New Jersey, in Long Branch. At the time, I didn't have any friends. I was living with my grandmother for 3 years, and I moved into my father's apartment. First time I lived with my dad because we visited him from time to time, and that relationship between my dad and my aunt and grandmother was odd after my mother passed away for those 3 years. So the second day I was there, I went to the public pool in my apartment complex, which ended up being the sanctuary for the next 13 years every summer of hanging out and meeting friends and having fun, and eating subs and listening to Beastie Boys and going swimming at night when you weren't allowed to. You know, that was getting away with something. But at the time when I met this friend, this guy Tony, we had an interesting arrangement when we first started hanging out. Tony had a lot of video game stuff, like way ahead. In 1985, he had way more. I mean, he had an Atari computer that played video games that no one had. People had the Commodore, but no one had that. And his cousin was a programmer or something, and he had all his games were on floppy disks, right? 5.5 inch or 5 1/4 inch floppy disks. It's 5.5 inch floppy disks because you had the 3 1/4 inch. Those were the hard ones that you stuck in the disk drive. Excuse me. So Tony, what I would do for like virtually every day over the summer was I would go to his house. I would help him make his beds, like, and clean his house. Like, I would help him do chores. It was such a weird relationship, right, to start off. And then I and he would play video games at his house. And eventually that led to a relationship, a friendship that I hold dearly to this day. Tony never forgets to text me on my birthday, no matter where I am. Tony, if you're watching, I love you, dude. You are one of my greatest friends. You've known me back when the hardest it was to be an adolescent, and you've always stayed connected with me and always empathized and understood where I was coming from. Tony knows this story. Tony's heard this story before. Everything that I'm telling here, he knows me. But RC Pro-Am is a game that he and I played on his Nintendo, and I have this game on Nintendo now. I play it on a TV, which is right behind the light that's sitting right here, and I keep this because, one, it allows me to hold on to the youth that I built in 1985 when I moved in with my father, and the other thing, too, it reminds me that I have a friend named Tony that even at a time when it was very hard for me to make friends, he always stayed by my side and always found a way to hang out with me. And he's a year older than me, so he was always like a big brother. And that's why I have this. Plus, it's freaking cool. It's RC Pro-Am. Come on. I don't know how many of these are out here, but eventually this will be worth $1 billion, and I'll sell it online. And there you go. So I have Legos here. And I thought the Legos are probably the most literal thing I have up here. They're not really sentimental, but what this represents is last year, my family and I went on a vacation. And my daughter was invited, or actually accepted, or I don't even know, actually, or maybe just paid to send her there, to dance down Main Street in Disney. And we decided to hit the Lego store and go and buy these Batman. And I actually have the thing. Now, you got to do this, right? If you're going to go to Disney and you're going to get one of these bands, you got to upgrade and get a something that means a little bit more. And this is a Tron one. I mean, I don't know if there's a lot of people that even know what Tron is, but Tron is the shit. 1982, first computer-generated Disney movie, all about video games. Guy invented video games, and they sucked him into the game, and he found his way to get out. Check it out. It's like on iTunes and all that kind of stuff, but it's the bomb. And I decided to pick this up, and this is kind of like more of my vacation shelf. And again, there's another bottle of cracked concrete. So that's an important shelf, but I guess I can just clean around it. So, and that's probably the dustiest shelf I got. But I have a sweet tooth for Clayface from the 1994 Batman cartoons. Probably one of the best, coolest cartoons they had. That's why I got that one. Abby put together the Skyline. Ironically, that Skyline was about 3 times the price of this thing, which I don't understand. I guess the smaller a Lego is, the more expensive it is. But a great racket, by the way, Lego. Way to go. Way to take the money from all parents so your kids can be happy on a Disney trip. And then not that I'm a super Star Wars guy, but I think the only movie worth watching in Star Wars is Empire Strikes Back. So this is my speeder, which is, again, probably the best rebellion vehicle that you can actually get. I know there's like a bigger one you could get, but that's pretty much that's the shit. So now I'm going to start moving down to the lower shelf. This is a mug. It's a simple mug, but this mug says Dad on it. Now, every year, my kids are invited for a kind of like a Disney's on my head, like a Christmas shop where they get to buy things for their parents from like $20 down. And every year, my kids take their money and they go and buy my wife and I something. And then we wrap it and that's it. And although I think this, you know what, man, now that I think about it, this might be a Father's Day gift. But my son decided to buy me this mug. And even though it's a mug that has Dad written in tools, it's actually under the word Dad, it says character builder. And on the scroll behind it, it has words like values, courage, integrity, leadership, honesty. And it just repeats over and over again. And the coolest thing about this mug is it's me. It's everything I hold dear. Or, you know, like when you get a gift where it's just something of what it is, but it taps into something that you actually believe in or like or something that's it's something that I felt encapsulated me as a parent. And I felt I needed something on the back of this wall to represent that enormous side of my life. So I decided to take this mug, and actually it's kind of dusty on the inside. Crazy. It's with by the way, I'm not sponsored by the Swiffer 360, but it's a kick-ass duster. If you guys are neat freaks and you like doing that stuff, it's awesome. And I bought a whole box today. And actually I bought a filler and a box. So that's that mug. These Beats Dre's right here. These are the first headphones that I used when I started recording videos in my office upstairs. This studio has only been here less than a year, but I used to record in the YouTube channels. My YouTube channel's been out for a while. I used to do videos up on YouTube out in my office, like upstairs between my kids' room and my bedroom, which my wife is like, the headboard's right on the other side of that wall. And eventually she got tired of that, and that got pretty loud. So we had to move down here. But these headphones are actually the first headphones I got. Funny, you know, enormously expensive headphones. They're all right. I get it. I'm kind of an addict with headphones too. Like, I like buying headphones. It's kind of my thing anytime I can see a deal on headphones. But these are the first ones that I used. And this thing right here, which is pretty cool, for you millennials watching, this is a tape deck. This is a Radio Shack tape deck that I actually stole from 3 jobs ago when I worked at a call center. Our trainers used to listen to audio tapes of our telemarketers to make sure they were following the rules or if they had an argument with a customer. So I actually used this to create one of probably my most intimate shows or podcasts, where I don't know if my fans really enjoyed it, but I don't have a lot of recordings of my family that aren't here anymore. So my grandfather and my mother, I don't have, who are on my mother's side, I don't have a lot of anything. Like now I can, my daughter found an old iPod that we gave to her like 5 years ago, that was sitting in my drawer, one of these old ones with like the long charger on it, like the iPod 2. And she had videos on it that she could immediately go back and remember how she was when she was like 6 and 7 years old, and she's 12 now. But I have a recording that my sister found of my mother and my father, grandmother and grandfather, eating dinner, where my father would just hit record, which is, I wonder why, you know, there's got to be some reason why I do all this, but would just, hit record, and he would just record their conversations. And so what I decided to do, and that was probably one of the most endearing episodes that really is more for me, is I played the tape and just did a little commentary over it. But I keep this because this is, number one, dead technology, because no one ever uses this stuff anymore. And B, it is special and weird, and I get to keep an antique on the back shelf. So that's why this tape deck's here. Now, right here, I didn't have this when I started this thing. This is, my kids are obsessed with YouTube. They constantly watch YouTubers, and they watch, like, kids. Anyone can get on there. Anyone could get on there and actually create. And now that their father does it, I love asking them questions about what they think about what I do. And the cool thing about it is that my kids always do kind of little things to kind of even promote what I'm trying to do. So Abby did this really cool TDI podcast. Now, I don't call us TDI podcast. I did that a while back, and I realized that there's a million other TDIs, and it didn't really make a special. So I was just very comfortable using our full name, even though it's enormously long. Even though our website, thedependentindependent.com, it's long. But what makes it special is my daughter decided to do this, and I said I would hang it in the studio, and I did. So this sits right behind this shelf here. Now, again, I'm not a I enjoy a nice beer now and then, but one thing that's amazingly cool about the town that I live in is we have 3 breweries in town, and I keep this to always remind myself about the live show I talked about before that I talk about, and you can see the Hops logo is actually on this poster too. But this kind of was, when you do something that are extremely uncomfortable doing or never really do something you never really thought you would do. I mean, like having a live podcast in a brewery with 150 people. I think it was, there was a lot of people there. I never felt so insecure doing anything as part of this than I was there, to a point you don't even notice it. But in the podcast I put out for the 50th episode, the 2-parter, there were times when I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm saying it out loud. So I was so insecure that I took that out of the podcast. But this here reminds me that that was a moment of vulnerability that I had, that I didn't really believe I could do it until I actually did it. I don't think live podcasts are really for this show. I don't know if I'm ever going to do that again, but it started here, and I felt once we were done with this, I was on cloud 9. But I keep this growler up here to remind me that it started at tomfoolery. It may end at tomfoolery, but that was a hump that I needed to get over. And plus, at the end of the day, they make the official beer of the podcast, so I got to have this here. And then, even though I have just some more video game stuff, if you have any Xboxers out there, Gears of War, Marcus Phoenix, very cool. That's there. And I got Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren, I think my son got this. I think he got this for Christmas, and I stole it and stuck it on the shelf here. He's a misunderstood guy, full of angst, looking for purpose. I think and as in all of us, share a little bit of what he deals with. The guy's just raging all the time. I don't know what his deal is. He's got to take a chill pill. But this just is, number one, a place filler, because I haven't found anything totally intimate to put in this position on the shelf. But it's something that I like to keep up here, because I think of all the everyone likes a hero, but people don't like the bad guy. I think deep down, this guy's a good guy. We just need to figure him out. And then, I said before, I know I have some video game books up here, and I started gaming a while, but about 4 years ago, I decided to join this program called Extra Life. Extra Life is a program where you can get, how do I describe it? It's a charity event where you binge game for 24 hours and get sponsors to sponsor you for that time. And I decided to do it, and it's actually, you game for 24 hours, so you're sitting on your ass for 24 hours, which they say is unhealthy, but so you have to take breaks. But you can do anything. You can do board games, you can do video games. But at the time when I did it, I raised a shitload of ton of money, and I was able to get this medal here. And as grown-ups, right, you don't get a lot of trophies. When was the last time anyone watching this that's in their 40s actually got a trophy? But this was a trophy for raising a lot of money, which wasn't a lot, but I guess according to everybody who tries to do it, it was a lot of money. And I pushed myself to a limit in 2012, the date's on here, that I never did before. I actually played for 24 hours. My family fed me breakfast, lunch, dinner, and breakfast. And I did it. Now, I try to do it subsequently since then, and I nearly killed myself, and I'll never do that again because it really screws up your head staying up all night. But I keep this here because it's my really only trophy that I've ever received since I became a grown person. And that's there. Now, I think I dusted these shelves enough, but I'm probably going to do a little bit better job when it's over. But that's kind of the story behind all my Easter eggs back here. I have these things here, and I told you about everything about the sign right here. But the things here, I have a light box here that my sister-in-law got for me because I like the fact she not only does she get me really cool gifts, but she gives me really cool T-shirts. And some of the T-shirts that I wear, not this one specifically, but the T-shirts that I wear while I do this podcast, she's purchased for me, usually for my birthday. And then Larry Herrera, who is the godfather of this podcast, has been on the show before. I've been on his show on the Idiots podcast. But he bought me this, or I don't know if he bought it for me, but got me this dog tag here. And the interesting thing about the dog tag is when he gave it to me during the podcast that we did, it was a gift. It was an endearing gift. It has his father's name and vitals on this dog tag. And he knows I'm in the military. But if you really want to, I think, when I have these conversations on my podcast, I really try to start at some place and get someplace. And that's really how conversations start. And hopefully at the end, you think differently or do something differently if you feel like you've grown. And when Larry gave me that dog tag at the beginning of the show, I'll be honest with you, I thought it was kind of silly. I was happy that he gave it to me. I mean, I'm gracious of getting anything that is a gift, but I didn't quite understand the speciality to it or the meaning behind it. And as I went through the show and started listening to Larry, I started understanding that he's made connections with all my stories with my father and his father, that he gave it to me, and I thought it was so important. And it's grown to be important to me that it has to hang on the shelf behind me. We have the Are You Listening sign that is our dead segment. Actually, we used to do that segment all the time. Now we have a different segment, but you have to turn in to our next podcast, and you're actually gonna hear that new segment because we talked about it on the last podcast I did. But that was done by Corey Stewart from the Unpopular Culture podcast. Unbelievable graphic designer. I might have to hire again to do my graphic design for the new segment. But I keep that up there because I think we all have to ask ourselves, are you really listening? Because we think you should. And that is my studio, guys. I want to thank everyone who's decided to check me out on Facebook Live, which wasn't something I was planning to do. Thank you, everyone, for checking me out on YouTube. I know I didn't break down everything. I know we got a lot of books here. I talked a little bit more about the ones that were given from family members and some of the ones that kind of talk about things I believe in. But I think I covered as much as I could here. And I think as we go farther into this journey, things on the back of this shelf are going to change. And they've had since I started this channel and started doing videos here. But I ask all of you, find something that means something. Because we do a lot of kind of passing over things that may require us to think or feel or something. And I was doing the same thing because, God forbid, I felt something about my past or try to let people in, which I talked about before. But these things remind me every time I look at them that this whole thing is just simply a way to get to the deeper part of who I am so I can be more happy with myself, understand who I am, believe in myself, and hopefully sharing that journey with all of you allows me to make an impact in your lives. And I know that's grandiose and all that big stuff, but again, it's getting late. This is my third Crack Concrete. I'm excited that people are joining me on Facebook Live, and I'm excited that you're listening and watching, or watch, I'm so used to saying listening, even though this isn't going to be a podcast, watching me on YouTube and Patreon. I'm excited. If you watch this, and if I get this done before next before Sunday night, which is tomorrow, please check out Liz Wiley and I on episode 77 of the Dependent Independent podcast. Again, I'll put all the links. If you like this video and you want to listen to the podcast, which we'd love you to join the community, Facebook, all that kind of good stuff, the links are in the show notes. Everyone on Facebook Live, I'm going to pop on actually when this is done. I know there's a few of you still watching, but I'm going to stop this video, and thanks very much for watching the Dependent Independent podcast. New kind of thing that we're kind of do to bring you a little bit of content that you're not used to getting on the podcast or on Facebook. And I will see you later.